welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotelo Esquire, and wrestling's premier photographer, Dr. Mike Leno. And we have another, you can call yourself a guest, but you're almost a host. You know, you're one of like our frequent alumni, and that's my good pal, Kid Chrome, Casey Wood, and I also want to thank you because this is the second time.
He's a tan, by the way.
Yes, but this is the second time now this week that we've had you, because we already did this show already on Sunday, and thanks to all the storms that we were having here in Northern California, for the first time in over 200 shows, my internet was cut off in the middle of the 54 minutes into the show. So we were almost done. We had 6 minutes left to record. The show got cut. And
you just reminded me, Casey lives in the Pacific Northwest. Casey, where are you? Are you in Oregon or Seattle in Washington State?
Oregon, right on the coast.
Okay.
Seaside, Deerhorn.
Did the storms sort of begin there and travel southward? Do you know?
It came and went like, geez, only a few days. It wasn't that bad at all, actually.
Well, you guys are used to the rain anyway. You guys are used to the rain anyway up there. But for us, it was those, you know, you never heard the term atmospheric river until, you know, like the last couple of years. And now,
kinds of goofy-ass weather terms. And before we get off of Oregon, I think the last time we had him on, and I shot a ton of his matches, maybe close to all of them in AP Dub, but it's Kid Chrome. But Casey, I think I've asked you this before, where we got bit to shit by the most aggressive mosquitoes ever. The world's famous lake there in South Oregon. Was it beautiful?
I remember you asked me about that. Yeah, I never heard of that before.
They are just, and they call them ice mosquitoes because when the ice would melt, and I think we went like April or you know, sometime in April, they come out. I guess they lay their eggs in the ice or in the winter. And they come out and like everywhere we went, including the hotel we stayed at, which was, I think, you know, like the park there, they have like double doors. You have to go through 2 rooms before you get into the inner guts of the hotel or the house, because they keep these skeeters out. And they were eating me through my coat. I think I told you I had a big old down.
Yeah, I remember that story you were saying. I've never even heard of that.
Monster skater. But you know, everything was cool there, and I think I told you we were on a quest to find bug-eating plants, and we saw plenty of them. And the only place in the world some of these things grow is Oregon, right on the California border.
Yeah, the plant.
What I asked you before we get into the wrestling is on drummers, and a lot of folks say Neil Peart, the late great Neil Peart from Rush, is the greatest drummer ever for at least rock. What are your thoughts on that? Who are some of your idols in drumming, since you do that yourself?
Well, you said Neil Peart. Obviously, that's not just rock. You said rock. He could play anything.
Yeah, he could.
Backwards and forwards. You couldn't put him in a category. You know, the guy's like, he's too good. I didn't want to be that good. You know, he could play anything, and he wrote most of Rush's songs too. People didn't know that.
Wow. Yeah, I think everybody. Yeah, I'm glad Rush is getting. I think there's a new documentary coming out. There's several books. I'm glad they're getting their due, and in particular the Iron Claw movie. You know, that was a big deal, having a Rush song for, what was it, Kerry Von Erich's entrance music?
Yeah, Modern Day Warrior.
Tom Sawyer.
Yeah.
I didn't see the movie yet, though. Have you seen the movie?
I've got like, well, Russ and I'll be talking about that. I really want to see the movie in its entirety, but it's hard because like I lived it. I was there shooting quite a bit in Dallas. First time I shot there was 75, then 77, 78. And also the Von Erich kids were huge. And I photographed them at Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis. Not so much Fritz, although Fritz in St. Louis was, you know, this mega heel. People sort of forget Jack Adkisson, AKA Fritz Von Erich, was particularly helping All Japan get off the ground for Giant Baba. He was like, he and the Sheik and Abdullah the Butcher at the beginning were like the 3 main heels. Of course, Blassie helped get Japanese wrestling over earlier than that with Ricky Dozan, he and the Destroyer. But man, Fritz was mega. And I'm looking for my negatives of Fritz Von Erich against Baba at the 1970 Los Angeles 22-man battle royal. You know, Roland Alexander,
so
APW were big into the battle royals that Roy Shire in San Francisco and Mike LaBelle did. Shire did them first, his 18-man battle royals.
Oh, you brought it up again on the show. I have to put a big buzzer up and say you brought up the George Shire Battle Royale, which you're only limited to do that once per year. So now you're done.
Well, what I'm going to say,
2024.
That was my secondary home base territory, shooting for the program, the official photographer of the program, but also Los Angeles was my main deal. And Mike LaBelle, the promoter in LA, brother Judo Gene LaBelle, wanted to outshine Shire. So Shire started like 2 years earlier with 18-man. So Mike LaBelle had a 22-man battle royal with some bogus, ridiculous $50,000 check to the winner.
Nobody ever gets paid those, too.
No, they get paid the same.
Money rewards. I was just watching.
But you're off title.
Yeah,
the funny thing was the trophy. So Roy didn't have like a big giant check like LaBelle would give to the winner. He had just a, kind of a common looking brass trophy, but it was the same trophy given to whoever won it, like over a nearly 20-year period. Every January, it was the biggest show of the year because a lot of the faces and heels that would be coming in from other territories would debut on the Battle Royal, and they'd stay there, and that was sort of a reflection on what you'd see the rest of the year. Whether Great Mephisto, Frankie Kane came in doing a rip-off Chic gimmick, or Superstar Graham debuted at a Battle Royal when he was sent from LA to get more training with Stu Hart in Calgary.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to get a guy in the ring. To introduce him as a battle royal, you got.
Yeah, you don't have to do much. It's a lot of standing around, depending on the guys. I mean, I've seen some real athletic battle royals where like Moskers is binging off everybody.
Casey, were you ever in a battle royal?
My very first match, if you want to call it that, was a battle royal at a fairgrounds in somewhere in, I can't remember where, Northern California, obviously APW. I wrestled that night, my first match later on, but the opening match was a battle royal, and that was interesting.
Who was in it?
Oh, well, Mike Modest had a good time with me. Yeah.
He worked stiff with the Green Young Boys?
Not with me, didn't he? Because he already did that in the gym, so I paid my dues pretty much.
Get your ass beat in the gym.
Yeah.
I bet you Max Justice was part of that thing.
Yes, I think he won, actually.
Yeah, I think I may have seen that one.
I have it on videos, but I haven't seen it for years. But that was weird walking into, my very first time walking outside, county fair, state fair, whatever it was. And it was just like, I didn't know if a heel or baby what I'm supposed to do, just get out there and go.
Mm.
And
who eliminated you? Who eliminated you?
Oh, geez. Good question. Probably Max. I gotta watch it again. I don't know.
Now, you would think he would be stiff like Joe Applebaumer, but I think Max, Mike Diamond.
Nobody ever stiffed me in the ring.
Yeah,
never.
I think he took great pains to because he was such a big guy. But who were some of the guys besides that Battle Royal that were there when you were wrestling? I think Steve Rosano and some of the rest of those guys, the Cole brothers, had kind of been phased out in the newer, younger blood like yourself.
Coles were gone. Steve was I'd met him a couple times. Didn't really know him that well at all.
Of course, Mark Smith.
Well, yeah. He was still doing the Bison thing at that point.
But then he transitioned over to SD2K, and that's when we had our feud between you and I, with the many dive outs that you did on me.
I just saw one of my memories on Facebook today. There's one of you and us three together and stuff, and the dive and all that stuff.
I don't think either one of you guys have seen. It's a shame because those archives are still not released. The video, because I was there from day one when APW was still just Pacific Coast Sports. It was still just training with Ricky Thompson. It wasn't a promotion yet. This was like 94, and then he started doing shows rolling maybe 96-ish.
And Gym Wars and stuff.
Gym Wars. And, so the early stars were like Super Diablo and obviously Modest, Donovan, Leprechaun, Aaron O'Grady, and
Robert Thompson.
Yeah, definitely Robert Thompson. And second year class included like Gigolo Steve Rosano, and a little bit later on TJ Vic Grimes and Vinny Massaro. Initially just reffing for like a good 12 months before they even had him start as Vic Grimes' masked little brother, Little Dick.
By the way, I wanted to bring this up. Did you know that Mike Modest was nominated for the Indie Wrestling Hall of Fame? I don't know where they have it, somewhere in LA. It's you probably should be covering that one.
I thought he already got it, didn't he?
Yeah, he's in it. He's in
yeah.
They have a California one, but then there's one for all the United States.
Do you guys know, or Russ, do you know the NorCal Hall of Fame? I got inducted with the guy that I was.
I'm still waiting for my invite.
You don't have to. You just go. But I was inducted.
No, I mean for me to be nominated, Buddy Sotelo to be NorCal.
You're missing the point there.
I don't know if they're doing it anymore because it was moving around. But it was for a while there was at Sparky Ballard's school, which is really a cool school promotion. That I don't know if he's doing it anymore.
I don't know where Sparky is these days.
But they sold. I guess they ruled that the property was like a vacated school, and they stopped. They booted him out. He had been there for a while. He had a first class setup and really great school. So I don't even know what's happening in the Bay Area in terms of, Russ, do you know what is Marcus Mack and APW doing?
It's really right now, Hood Slam is the big deal. The Stoner Brothers. In fact, they're doing GCW. They're going to be doing a GCW show down in Los Angeles. That's coming up on
that. So like a combined show
on 420. So, the surprise, that the Stoner Brothers will be on a show on 420 down in LA. I don't have all the particulars there, but it's something that you probably should be able to cover.
Yeah, I should go, because really COVID cut into, because my wife and I take care of her parents, senior parents, it was like, I just didn't want to, possibly risk getting them sick or anything. So I, immediately stopped. I was going, once we moved down here before COVID hit in 2019, I was hitting all the Pro Wrestling Guerrilla shows where a lot of APW talent had come down well prior to that. They moved locations a lot. And I don't know if you guys were aware, it was unique. Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, particularly in the last 20 years, was able to utilize New Japan talent, both groups from Mexico, TNA talent, where Ring of Honor couldn't. They were limited. They couldn't obviously use TNA talent, who they didn't want their.
Wasn't Pro Wrestling Guerrilla run by Gabe Ramirez? No. Gabe is in South San Francisco, or San Jose rather, with whatever it's called, Revolution Pro. It's the Revolution Pro.
Pro Wrestling Guerrilla is like hybridized, and it was like the West Coast Ring of Honor, but even with more talent, because they could utilize all the great Ring of Honor talent. I saw quite a few Bryan Danielson, Samoa Joe matches, Nigel McGuinness stuff. All this.
You worked a couple cards with Samoa Joe, and when they did the XPW Invasion, who were you paired up against? Who did they send you?
The UPW, Rick Bassman group.
I'm sorry, UPW. Yeah,
that was Bassman. I worked with APW talent. I wasn't part of that whole angle, the invasion angle.
Oh, really? Okay.
I worked with just whoever, like Jody France or somebody.
Oh, okay. Because
Cena was there, and Samoa Joe, and whoever else.
Me and Boom Boom worked against Samoa.
Alyssa Anderson was still dating whichever Ballard. I can't remember, Shane or Shannon. And obviously Frankie Kazarian was up a lot. Yeah, that was a fun time at the with the Vallejo Fairgrounds, was it? The venue
Chris Daniels came there a lot too, and
okay, Daniels was coming up even before that. I forget the guy come up. He was teaming with.
But he was there at that time a lot, though. A lot of those shows. He worked a lot of those shows.
And we saw all of his hair changes bleach blonde hair, well before he shaved it off. But I would go down to EWF, Jesse Hernandez, Bill Anderson, and that's when he moved in to California from Chicago. That's where he was finessing at with Louis Spicoli and a lot of great talent. Carl Anderson of the Good Brothers, who did all that New Japan conquering with that group there that is in like its 5th or 6th incarnation now.
Yeah, Bill's a cool guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we lost him, right? Or wait, no, not.
What? No.
Is Bill Anderson still around?
No, he kind of recovered from
he got sick for a while.
Intestinal things and
okay,
stuff.
I thought for some reason he died when we lost him
for forever. Yeah, no.
In 2020, we lost so many people. I got lost track of who actually still made it through 2020, and I'm still, unfortunately, I guess some people. Weren't able to make it through. And then we just like last year, there were a lot of people that died too. We had a lot
that passed. One thing that it resurrected from the death was the XPW Rob Black promotion. It's back. It's in the Valley with a lot of folks, but Jasmine St. Clair is back managing, and she's managing. Necro Butcher, but he's playing off of Donald Trump, so he's like the MAGA Butcher is what he's called. And they have some, a lot of stars I've not heard of. I want to go photograph at that. It's just because that's what I was Kevin Kleinrock, who was the booker. I was one of his 2 photographers. I was flown down to shoot all of that stuff during the whole XPW, which is why the Dark Side of the Rings look at XPW. I had a lot of photos in that. And that upcoming season of Dark Side is like 2 weeks. First, it starts on Vice Network the first Tuesday of.
They're probably working hard to come up. They're probably working very hard to come up with one for Billy Jack Haynes, which is the
transition.
Well, they're going to have to do one on him now after they do one on a former owner of a major company. I was looking at the NBC News thing, and Billy Jack Haynes, you wouldn't think he was in his 70s, but the deceased, identified as his wife, Janine Beecraft, was 85. How could a
85,
guy?
85, yes.
So, Russ, I'm not finding any stories on whether this was an alleged mercy thing. What is your
suicide? I was just watching the thing. They said, murder, suicide, assisted killing kind of thing. Because she had dementia, and she was all goofy, and he wanted to put her out of her misery, apparently, or whatever. I don't know. That's what last thing I saw.
Why didn't he take her to a doctor instead of doing it yourself? You're going to get in trouble.
Well, don't ask me.
Yeah, I know.
When
he had a long history during his career of getting into fights with guys and having he was hot-headed, which was, I believe, why WWF at the time let him go. And he was, big star in Florida after, starting out with Don Owen in Portland, big star there well before WWF, but was let go. I don't think he even served out the time that he was going to be doing there. They put a few straps on him, like the tag straps. But
with Wahoo, the U.S. Straps, and he got in Jim Crockett's face because Wahoo got paid more than he did for Starrcade '85, I think it was.
Yeah, but Wahoo's been a star since like 1963. We would bop back into the NFL. It was a big name.
But to Billy Jack, though, that didn't fly. So.
But really, when you look at the era, I mean, of like the most developed guys, he was there with like Orndorff and like superstar Billy Graham and Hulk Hogan himself, as far as like a body that looked like, as Tony Atlas, his build and his development and just the ruggedness of him was something that, I mean, everyone wanted to root for. It was, but when we did the show before, the lost episode, which will probably never be recovered thanks to Skype. And I'm going to make sure to hit stop recording on this thing when we're done so we don't lose this thing anymore. I've done over 200 shows, and it never happened before.
You guys are talking to Russ, you're talking about body. I even then, I always was looking at work rate. And so I would focus on Dynamite Kid and Bulldog and some of the, the guys that could work, Brett, most definitely at that point in time. And I was never really impressed with his.
No, his work rate was never very good. He lacked that kind of intensity in the ring when he got in the ring. He never had that. For instance, I've seen a bunch of Billy Jack Haynes matches. None of them stand out. Maybe
he had a feud though in Florida with Manny Fernandez as the babyface, and those guys could bring it out because they both were quote unquote hot-headed guys, and there was intensity there at various points with him. He wasn't comedic or anything like that, like a Coco Ware who could still work.
That was the thing. They always tried to push him as a face. I guess I didn't really watch the Florida wrestling stuff. I really knew about him when he was here in Portland and then his WWF run and then the world class run that he had. So I didn't really see him. And he was always trying to be a face in those matches. And I just think it never really stuck.
Wasn't quite, and he was in and out of groups. He was promoting for a while and heard that promotion fizzled. This was long after Don Owen, the total legend of Portland wrestling.
Well, he did during Don Owens, though. He went and formed OWF. He left Don Owens, and that folded like 3 months. He went back, and Owens took him back.
What a great guy. Don, and in particular, his brother Elton was a guy that the boys, would like to fool. And Elton Owen was Don's brother, and he loved what he thought were shoots. So the guys
would work him, right?
Things so they wouldn't get hurt. Yeah, he was paying him big money just to put on a little show that he thought was a shoot, but they were working, doing business, and it was all like scripted and stuff. But Elton Owen fell for it every time, and he was one of those characters in wrestling during that classic era. So many great promoters. Now I see a lot of pimply faced kids still promoting. Versus then, these were mostly ex-wrestlers with a cigar in their mouth, like Dick the Bruiser. They were rough, tough D's and Do's guys you did not F over because they could probably hook and shoot and stretch you if you botched a finish or something.
Yeah, times have changed.
Yeah, the times are you? I forget if we asked you this because it's been a couple of months, maybe 2 months since I was on with you. Are you watching today's product? And if so, what do you think of it? Like AEW versus, obviously WWE or some of the.
About AEW, I've only seen a few shows. My wife knows more about WWE than I do right now, she's a big fan, I don't watch like I used to. Like I remember telling you last time.
I should check out AEW though, because, for example,
I guess I don't know why I just don't come across it. I guess, but I watch YouTube old school stuff all the time. I'm just so old school.
Yeah, I get.
I'm guilty of that. You know what I did last night because there was no basketball on and no football on and no baseball on. You know what I watched? Super Clash 3.
I just watched that too.
Are you serious?
The Cow Palace.
No. It was in Chicago. It's Super Clash 3 in Chicago where it was Kerry Von Erich versus Jerry Lawler for the unified title.
And the other guy, Steve Cox from, I guess, against the Samoans that Bill Watts sent up there.
Yeah, the Samoan SWAT team.
It was a good card. I paid for it. It was a pay-per-view. I paid for it and enjoyed it. Did you watch it, Chrome, at the time? Casey, did you watch it at the time when it occurred or later?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
I forget now, what were some of the other matches? I just mentioned the Michael P.S. Hayes tag.
Oh, they had Sergeant Slaughter against Colonel De Beers in a boot camp match, you know, which was, and then the Iron Sheik came in and
Greg Gagne against Ronnie Garvin or something.
Greg Gagne against Ron Garvin for the the television title.
Universal Television, whatever they call it.
Exactly.
I think that's the one and only time that title was ever utilized because it was created out of nowhere. AWA never had that title.
And then after the main event, they had the Rock and Roll Express against the Stud Stable, like thrown in at the very end, like after you've already had like the Jerry Lawler, Kerry Von Erich thing.
The world title is particularly a title versus
really weirdly booked.
The last match.
It was really weirdly booked. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, they had the lingerie battle royale with a bunch of ladies.
They were weren't they glow lady wrestlers?
No, they were even worse. A lot of them were except Luna Vachon was in it. That's about the only lady that really deserved to be in there, and she got eliminated relatively early. And this was before Luna had the face tattoos done. So she was, and before she did the shaved side of the head look that she was good, she went with for a while, but it was.
I was very close to Luna, who's actually stayed at our house up in Alameda when she was still married to Dave Peterson, who worked as one of the masked, I can't think of their name now, for All Japan, but he was Gangrel. He later became Gangrel. So they came to a number of Cauliflower Alleys, and I got to induct.
I worked a number of shows with Gangrel. Really nice guy. Definitely a super nice guy.
So that's a promotion there in the Bay Area Rikishi would bring his guys up from L.A. Knox Pro, I think, is his school somewhere in Southern California here. But he'd bring them up to the peninsula area of the Bay Area with Black Pearl, who was on that big, huge graphic that they showed of the Anawahe family. I don't know, Russ, if you watch this on WWE, they had Rock about a week and a half ago. Now that he's a heel there, he goes over the whole lineage. And they had people that have never wrestled for WWF or E on it, like Sam Fatu, Tonga Kid's son, Jacob Fatu, an APW, huge guy who's been a world champion for groups like MLW, Court Bauer, with shows all over the U.S. And they had his name on there, but they also had Black Pearl, just a Bay Area indie guy that Rikishi trained as part of that huge.
Yeah, I worked a show with them a long time ago. Rikishi and his group. Although my story wasn't as positive as it could have been, because I refused to take the stink face, and I stuck Anthony Carty into it, and he got mad that I wouldn't take the stink face personally. And to be honest with you, that's one move I'm glad I never have taken, personally.
Wait, I took it. It was very pleasant. I took it from ODB, beautiful lady wrestler, when she was
very pleasant.
Oh yeah, well, I took them from Betty Beefcake, but I wasn't going to take one from Rikishi.
That would have been gotten you over. Matt Hardy, when he was doing his insane gimmick, whatever that thing was, where he was like from the 16th century at an APW Marcus Max show, he told me in advance, just work with me. So he was clobbering me as the ringside photographer, beating me down. I didn't feel a thing. And I looked at the tape later, and it looked like I was getting killed. So he was a pretty amazing, performer. And boy, do I miss. I don't mean to harp on it. I miss the Bay Area.
Did you ever work the Samoan Fest in the Bay Area?
Was that a Rikishi show, or did they bring a show there? Samoan Fest. Where would that have been? I'm sorry.
San Francisco.
It was in San Francisco.
And, yeah, it was. The Samoan family. Everybody was there. There's a million of them.
Yeah, they're all related. You guys have to look that up if you don't know what I'm talking about. They showed on WWE TV this huge thing, and it starts up there with the Peter Maivia, High Chief Peter Maivia, who was actually, when he first came to San Francisco, they just called him Prince Peter Maivia, and he had no title like that when he started in Hawaii, of all places.
I remember him as the High Chief, though. I remember.
Yeah, that was like late '70s for Tri WF.
I know, but that's right about when I started watching.
And you know the big thing about that, you talk about Bay Area influence. Pat Patterson quickly became, once he got there to work for Vince Sr., became close with Vince Jr., obviously. But Pat Patterson brought in like a plethora of guys who he worked with in the Bay Area for Roy Shire. From Ray Stevens, Pat, wanted to give him throw him a bone, get him some paydays, and he was feuding with various folks. But Rocky Johnson, Pat brought in, Peter Mavia, obviously, Don Morocco. He brought Fuji back, who had heat with Vince Sr. He wasn't going to ever come back, and that was due to Pat Patterson. And there were several other guys that came in there that Pat helped out, which was, if you look at 70s wrestling, you see all these cards dominated with either Rocky Johnson team with Peter Mavia or Ray or sure. Pat or Pepper Gomez. You go, wow, these guys.
Well, and all those talents wound up going up to Oregon. They do that circuit.
I don't think Rocky really worked for Don, but Pat started. Or Pat was referred to Shire. Pepper Martin he was working a program for Don Owen in Portland with Pat Patterson in 65, 66, and he recommended him to Shire because he said, this looks like Ray Stevens' kid brother. But yeah, you're right. There was some bopping and trading of talent. Like Dutch Savage would come from Portland, as did Lonnie Main, who was there for years, would come in.
Rocky Johnson was in Portland for a long time. Not a long time, but for
Lonnie Main, I urge, there's not a lot of footage of him.
Rocky Johnson.
In LA shooting 8mm while I was shooting ringside. This was Mark Dawson, son of Richard Dawson, the game show movie star guy. But he has probably the only Lonnie Main footage out there. Well before he was teaming and main eventing with Piper in both LA and San Francisco at the same time. Like Lonnie was a babyface in San Francisco, so he was facing Piper as the heel in the main events, but then they would team in LA as heels at the very same time, and San Francisco was getting the LaBelle Los Angeles footage, and people were going, what the F is going on here?
What is this, right?
In the past, all you had was the magazines. There was no internet. People didn't know, oh, geez, who's wrestling in two territories at once. And that was really a unique California thing. No one else in any other territory was main eventing in two distinctly unrelated territories at the same time. But Lonnie Moondog Main and Roddy.
What do you guys think about with Billy Corgan trying to sort of bring back the NWA concept of territories and trying to bring the territory system back into play?
Is that what he's trying to do?
Yeah.
He had passion. Casey, if you don't know, like 10, 15 years ago, he was fronting money for a small Chicago indie. Billy grew up in the Chicago area.
I heard about the NWA thing he was trying to do.
Well, he's been doing that for maybe 4 to 5 years, using a lot of people he met in TNA, like C3 and others there. And
like the GBS set with the old belts and stuff he was trying to do. I think
they went in and they've done at least one, and I think they're doing it this year. Big show at the St. Louis Wrestling at the Chase, which is where Sam Muchnick had his Saturday TV taping. I shot there. It's not the exact same venue in the Chase Hotel where they had the wrestling, but it is at the Chase Hotel. So I got to give props to Billy, but they have like sputters.
I haven't seen it, so I can't comment. I don't know.
It's free. Their television is free. It's all archived. It's free online to watch. And some of their pay-per-views, they brought in Ric Flair, to rep and cut promos and various things. So they're bringing back the NWA though, Russ. If you've watched it, they're not always in the conversation. They've had there was some PR problem with Tyrus Brodus Clay as their champion being on Fox, some of the conservative shows,
with the belt too.
Yeah, he had the belt. I watched it. He was on the morning show, and then he was on the comedian Greg Gutfeld's show as the regular.
Oh, yeah.
And that's that was big time. Whether you are conservative or not, you do have to appreciate the fact, hey, this guy is on big TV, even though it's conservative TV. He is bringing it, but it didn't really translate into more viewership. And now he's gone from Billy Corgan's NWA. But the NWA, they keep trying to bring it back. Dennis Coralluzzo tried bringing it back in the late 80s, early 90s. And then that goofy attorney tried bringing, he bought it from Coralluzzo and Howard Brody, the then NWA. But it's like a piss poor, you can't recreate that. I got to see the true NWA, the
Right.
territories. It was the biggest, you had three companies battling: AWA, Worldwide Wrestling Federation, Vince Sr., and then the NWA, which was far bigger. It was global. That champion would go to Australia, well beyond Mexico, Japan, all over Canada and stuff. And I don't want to shit on it because I would hope it works. You want everybody to succeed. And Billy does have a lot of money from, Smashing Pumpkins money. But
yeah.
they need some more name talent. There's a lot of up and comers. They're at that tier with OVW, et cetera, whereas MLW and Impact TNA are a little bit above them, nowhere close to WWE or AEW. But I would like to see like a Super Bowl of wrestling if those groups could get along, and they were trading talent up until about a year ago, meaning AEW, Billy Corgan's NWA, and TNA Impact. And that sort of has stopped now. They're not trading talent. Like Billy Corgan had, she really rose to fame in the Bay Area, was Thunder Rosa on all of both the APW and Gabe Ramirez's shows.
And Bailey.
Yeah, Bailey was not on APW, but she was on Big Time Wrestling, Kirk White's thing. That's where she started.
And Wrestling for Charity. I worked shows with her.
Yeah,
Davina Rose.
Yeah, Pam, good kid, and now she's going to be in the main event for.
But I don't know. There seems like there's this longing to bring back territories. I mean, I think you and me and people who are older do look back on what the territories were all about and look fondly back on there. And I don't know. I think like what you talked about here, like let's say like Next, Ring of Honor, TNA, and MLW were to have some kind of like massive tournament, like a King of the Indies type thing. And remember that was,
Yeah, but you're going to have a problem in that Tony Khan owns Ring of Honor now. He purchased it about 2.5 years ago, and he promotes.
But he's not doing anything with it. It just sits there on the shelf.
Like monthly or monthly pay-per-views. They have a pay-per-view coming up this week.
It's really not something but what I'm saying is, like, if you take your secondary promotions, what have you got to lose?
But the problem is each group. It's the problem that plagued the territories when the guys, the few survivors, Crockett's, Gagne, Bill Watts, and Jerry Jarrett tried getting along and working together on the Pro Wrestling America. They wanted their own guys to go over and
or a Super Clash,
struggle.
like what I just saw with Super Clash, with AWA and WCW,
because it wasn't as good as
WCCW.
NWA versus AWA champion a couple of years prior to Super Clash 3, Pro Wrestling America, where you'd have Flair against Bockwinkel or Backlund, well, not Backlund, but that was in a different territory. But you'd have like the NWA talent champ, Flair or Harley Race, maybe working Bockwinkel, the perennial AWA champ.
Yeah, well, but I think there's this. If the feds use their sort of secondary promotions like NXT, that's sort of not in the limelight right now, and they teamed up with like say Ring of Honor, and they had just some kind of like indie like tournament, where they get the guys that they aren't using, and the ones that are sort of on the shelf and are able to, I think that would be a win-win for everybody. And you get and you're not compromising your main promotions. You're not having AEW face the WWE in anything, because I know that would be too big of a that would be too mind melting. But but against the smaller promotions all getting together, I would love to see something like that happen. I just think there's this, overall, desire to see like those smaller ones get involved, and the NWA as well, and utilize some of the talent.
Look at the history, and you could look in any territory or area, but if you look in Northern California, in the once Roy Shire stopped promoting in the 80s and 90s, you had 3 different promoters. They would refuse to work together: Woody Farmer, Jerry Monty, and Alexis Smirnoff. This is 80s through maybe 94. And then Roland later with APW, and then when there was Iron and Big Time Wrestling, Kirk White, the only 2 that out of any of those years that tried doing 2 things, and it was twice, and they were both miserable failures, sadly, was APW against Big Time Wrestling. Although we could also add in, as you brought up, which I think was far more successful. It really was, because it lasted. How long did the UPW versus APW invasion thing? Was it ended sort of with King of the Indies, but did it go at least like 12, 14 months? Or
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Easy. Yeah.
I thought it did. And it was tremendous because Bassman had a lot of talent. APW had always an incredible roster of great guys, depending on whoever were the trainers at the time.
And they even brought some guys down to LA to get their first real exposure down in Los Angeles. When we invaded back down there, I wasn't part of that invasion, but
I think Venice went down there. Venice DeMarco. Does anybody keep in touch with some of these guys? Mayock the Magician. What was his real name? James.
James Watkins.
I haven't seen him. He was a cool guy.
Yeah, and I haven't talked to James.
What was the guy's name? George Drake. Didn't we have a George Drake? What was his name?
Tommy Drake, you mean?
Tommy Drake. Okay, Tommy Drake.
Yeah, no, he's a friend of Donovan Morgan's.
Yeah.
Still down in those 2 hang out.
I still talk to him. I still talk to him a lot too.
You talk to Donovan or Drake?
Both.
Well, try to bring. Why don't you bring Drake back to the show?
Yeah, I would do a show with him if he ever wants to.
I just texted him. I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago. I guess maybe.
Corey's his first name, right?
Corey's his real. Yeah, Corey's his real name.
I forgot what his last name is.
Yeah, I told Casey that I before I moved, and even now I have to come back up to the Bay Area quite a bit. Try to get a APW reunion party where no matter what generation it was from the
big barbecue. Barbecue in the parking lot.
Or find that Indian place that Roland always went to.
Oh yeah, I remember that place well.
I don't think it's open still. There's that Indian restaurant that APW did all his fun, or the Denny's, the one that was on Winton, the Applebee's.
Applebee's, yeah.
Roland did the first 5 years of APW. He would take us all out at Christmas to some Mexican place, really, really good in, I think it was Fremont. It wasn't real close to the school like the Indian place.
I went there once too for the awards ceremony.
Yeah.
That they had.
Yeah. And this was before, then you would have some of the wives, and Betty Beefcake was a big part of that. They would organize.
He got Rookie of the Year.
Oh, he got his
Rookie of the Year trophy. Nice.
But remember, they owned a bar there on Mission Boulevard, and we always go there afterwards too. Sherry's Lounge. You've been there a few times.
Yeah, Russell. I remember that place.
Yes.
But do you remember the later on in the early 2000s, the barbecues for just staff and people? It was in the daytime, so a few fans came that were, I think Licorice Joe might have came to a couple of them, and heard he's had some health issues. So we want to send our best to Licorice Joe. Russ, you remember him from the Gym Wars. He was one of the more vocal, colorful characters, fans there. We had quite a bevy of regulars. If you remember too, until somebody snitched on him that they.
I remember that the fire marshal thing.
Yeah. because they would have too many, but they would open up the doors and there would be standing room only that would explode out into the parking lot. People just standing and watching these amazing.
Some guy that Roland had heat with, and this guy was trying to, I can't remember his name, was always trying to shut Roland down for anything. You know, even like spot shows at high school gyms or whatever, always trying to, you know, I don't know who it was, some old promoter they had heat with, and we do gym wars in the Foreman Ring, fire marshal. You know, you can't do a show, we do it anyway, but it was probably that guy calling, it was actually a fire marshal.
We had a lot of internet heat too. I forget.
Yeah.
It was using like a fake kayfabe name. I have to look at it too, because that was one of his many emails that he would use. You know, to get a hold of him personally, I'd have to use
message boards. The APW message boards always lit up.
Right.
I understand is, you know, when we're talking like in the 70s, when I was still coming up from LA to shoot at Roy's bigger shows, like all the January Battle Royals, Eddie Moretti, Moondog Moretti, and Roland were there as fans, and half of the time they wouldn't even be watching the matches, they'd be trying to pick up chicks, pick up girls at the shows at the Cow Palace and some of the smaller venues like Oakland Kaiser Center or San Jose Civic. And everybody knew Roland and liked him, like Dorothy Hopkins, who was the female who made a lot of the ring ropes for Ray, Pat, Rocky, Pepper Gomez, Pepper Martin, etc. And I think was one of Roy's rats, like the Miss Wrestling girls. And you guys know that Adrienne Barbeau, not just Swamp Thing, but she was the daughter on Maude, you know, this accomplished actress. She was like the second ever Miss Wrestling, standing next to the signboard with that day's TV tapings for Shire shows in like 72, 71, 72. You didn't know that, Adrienne Barbeau? You got to look, because there's some photos online.
I didn't know she did that. So
Yeah. She's a big, you know, major then. And she's doing some TV projects and stuff now. Still looks hot, but then you go, wow, she was involved with pro wrestling? That's crazy.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't never heard of that before.
Yeah, she was. He went through like 4 to 5, and well, I won't. There was allegations he was fooling around with one of them, and that had to stop when his wife put a stop to it. So there weren't any more Miss Wrestlings after about 7.
Wrestling and infidelity, it goes back as long as wrestling, you know.
There's your segue into Vince McMahon right there.
Oh yeah, but Mike doesn't want to talk about Vince because
I still freelance for the company in terms of my photo archive of things I've shot, particularly legends. But one thing I do like since he's gone is I do like Hunter is a long-term booker, meaning Paul Levesque. He's
if he's able to survive all these allegations.
Yeah, I mean,
he's still on TV.
Whatever, but the booking makes sense. He is utilizing the NXT talent as he did. He was running NXT, and then he got, you know, the plug pulled out from under him. But you know, you were having great stuff like, various Japanese guys and Samoa Joe and Finn Balor, all of this amazing talent. Bobby Roode, who just got medical clearance today, but he wants to just continue. He doesn't want to wrestle. He's been out of action at least 2 years, had 2 neck fusions.
God, I kind of forgot about him.
Got clearance. He's an amazing wrestler, got clearance, but he's happy doing agent work right now. You know, it's like, why risk it? You know, you see some bumps that Edge is taking. He's in AEW, working under his real name of Adam Copeland. He's taking bumps right on the neck, and I just cringe. In fact, he is out of action right now. He got hurt. Forget who he was working with, Sammy, I'll think of his name in a second or two. No, it's the guy, Daniel Garcia. Daniel Garcia, he just had a match with him, like I think it was last Saturday or last Friday on TV, and Edge was injured in that. You know, he had not worked for like 9, 10 years, and the doctors had told him, as they did with Saraya, that, you know, if either one of them worked, or even Christian, that they would risk being paralyzed. And
Daniel Bryant, you know, has got that same, clock ticking. I mean,
he's insane. I don't know how he's escaped paralysis, but he's working matches where he just gets killed in New Japan, and then he does the same in AEW.
Braun Strowman said that like 15% of his leg is paralyzed. One of his legs is paralyzed due to nerve damage that he suffered. So, yeah, you know, it is, but you know, it's obviously a big issue, and you know, the WWE and AEW just have so much talent. They as soon as somebody gets hurt, they just, you know, get them off the scene.
Well, the problem with AEW, the only criticism I have is Tony has accumulated so much talent. You have guys like Rusev in the back, you know, he'll maybe be given matches for like 2-3 weeks in a row, but then Tony is acquiring Will Ospreay, the greatest worker in the world, and he's going to be getting Okada and the former Mercedes Moné, who was whatever her name was, I forget, in WWF. She's signing in a couple of weeks. They're saving her for Boston, her hometown. And so when they keep bringing in new talent, then the focus goes on them, and some great talent that they have just sit at home and they're not on television. Instead of doing updates, doing something, maybe on their website, letting you know if somebody's out injured, well, you could keep them fresh. You know, WWE has the same problem with Big E. They don't put him on television, whereas he could be doing some things and having updates. Oh, this is what's going on with my neck, but I'm going to do a pay-per-view where I, you know, give my predictions. Something. Put these guys on TV instead of like not having them at all, and then fans forget about
who they are. Absolutely.
When you accumulate way too much talent.
Yeah. No, we'll see if the new, you know, WWE, you know, hierarchy, you know, and maybe the, you know, Triple H, if he survives, you know, what kind of direction they
but
take.
In the meantime, his booking, you can see he's obviously also given the green light to Shawn Michaels to run NXT, the farm system. They have television, Casey, every Tuesday on the same USA network until things change next January when Raw goes to Netflix and SmackDown leaves Fox for USA, and we don't know where. I think NXT is just going to stick with USA, but their farm system has great character development. They bring down a lot of folks from the main roster like Finn Balor and Dominic Mysterio and right. Yeah, tons of their talent. And in fact, our own Shotzi Blackheart got legit hurt. She's going to be out a year Tuesday night. Nights ago.
Jesus.
Yeah, blew out her knee in a NXT Women's World Title match.
Damn.
Wow. A year is a long freaking time.
And they had to, on the fly, they just brought in one of their developmentals who had just had a squash match, you know, like 5 minutes before this match started, and then Shotzi gets injured about a third of the way through, so they brought her out as the replacement right on TV. Haven't seen that in many, many years, probably dating back to the 80s.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I should start watching that. I have not been watching
tonight, and you if you want to see some Kushida from New Japan, one of the greatest junior heavyweights since Liger. He's in the main event on Impact. Well, Impact's been renamed. It's gone back to its original TNA name. And you can watch it for free online on YouTube, or if you have the AXS cable channel. It's on tonight, 2 hours of that, and then followed by an hour of New Japan. Zack Sabre Jr. against Bryan Danielson from the Tokyo Dome show.
Actually, should be a good match.
That's going to be off the charts, because Zack Sabre Jr., amazing. And he came in, worked his only California show, well, Northern California show on an AP dub card. I forget who he worked with. It wasn't a guy of his caliber, but which was a shame. But Zack Sabre Jr. and Will Ospreay, actually probably two of the greatest workers. And they're from the UK. Greatest workers of today's generation working now. And they're regulars in AEW. So
I will check it out.
Yeah, you don't want to give these things a try. But if you don't get a chance to watch TNA, I would urge you to watch this New Japan thing tonight on free TV.
Well, I'm going to be busy tomorrow watching the Iron Claw, so I will be letting you know. Maybe if you get a chance to watch it by Sunday, you know, we can talk about it in retrospect on the show, Mike. You and I can. So
I told you I've seen clips. The guys playing Flair and Harley Race are horrible, but the other guys
I did see the Flair clip. The
Yeah,
Florida clip was
the guy
terrible.
that's doing Fritz, I've heard, is okay, but I lived that stuff, so I'm going to be very critical of it because I knew all that stuff. I won't say which one of the Von Erich kids selling pot to fans in 1977 at the back of the Sportatorium. Personally saw that, and he got chewed out by Jack Fritz later on when that got out there, and it's all kinds of stuff. I saw all kinds
The
of
statute of limitations is run on that, by the way.
well, I saw crazy stuff with Chris Adams,
This is marijuana.
off fans, the late great Chris Adams, and not Tully Blanchard, but the other guy that was teaming with Chris Adams. What was his name? Gino Hernandez. Man, what a talent that guy was.
Yeah.
And they did a dark side on him.
Yeah, they did. That was one of their early ones. Anyway, guys, we're done with the hour. I want to thank you, Casey, for joining us again. You know, the 2 shows in a week. I really appreciate you.
Maybe he could show us some of his drumming a little bit at one of these.
No.
I'd love to see it. Who knew he had this amazing talent?
Yeah, I know. One of these days, I'll have to do the Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast band. We'll have to get all the people that we know that know how to play instruments and bring them all together to perform sometime. My brother does bass, so we got that taken care of. We just need keyboards and a guitar. And
Donovan Morgan can do lead singing.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
Oh, come on now.
Yeah. That's hilarious, guys. Anyway, thanks so much.
On one goofy.
You can find me on YouTube.
But all right, guys. Good night, and thank you a bunch. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll see everyone next week. Good night, everyone.